way, you know, I don't know where these purple, whatever. Anyway. Good morning. Good morning. Today we're going over working with multiple strands of yarn. And this is going to be a fun one. I think I'm going to go ahead and go over the tips that I've already given you guys, but just to voice it and make it a little more understandable. So we're going to start with the benefits or different reasons why you would want to work with multiple strands of yarn. So going off the list, the first one is that you can create your own colorways. Creating your own colorways is really fun because then you'll have something that's unique to you and to your style. So I found these three skeins in my stash, and I love the three colors together. So I wanted to see what they looked like. So later on, I'll go ahead and show you physically how we're going to crochet with multiple strands with these three colors. Now, a second reason why you would want to work with multiple strands is being able to substitute a bulky yarn by using 3 strands of a medium weight yarn or something similar. For example, if you have a pattern that requires a bulky weight yarn, you can simply double up your yarn, triple up your yarn, and of course you would have to make sure that your gauge matches if it matters. And then you won't even have to go to the store to buy a bulky yarn because you can just double them up. And it could look even better. I'm serious when I say that, and I'll show you why later. Now, the third reason why you would want to work with multiple strands is because it can create a sturdier fabric. So let's look at 2 examples. The first example is my color block beach bag. If you haven't seen the pattern yet, it's just for a simple beach bag using the single crochet stitch the whole time. But I use 2 strands of yarn throughout the entire project. So looking at the strap, you can see, I know it's through the camera and we're not in person, so I don't know how well you can really tell. But this fabric doesn't stretch, really. It's very sturdy and durable, and that is why I decided to make the whole bag holding 2 strands, because obviously this is a beach bag, and I have a little one who enjoys bringing tons of beach toys to the beach. And guess what? It holds all of it. It holds all the toys. It holds our snacks, our drinks, our towels. It's a really great bag to have. So if you worked with 1 strand of yarn, it wouldn't be as sturdy and it might droop, fall apart even. Anyway, my point is, I love working with multiple strands of yarn. The second example I didn't list in the PDF, but if you're making baskets are perfect for working with multiple strands because it creates that same sturdiness so that your basket stands upright. So let me see if I have any. Nope, I don't have any. Oh, yes, I do. Ooh, this is what I call my scrap basket. So give me 1 second and I will. Like I said, this is called my scrap basket. I just have all of my random scraps of yarn in here. But when I created this basket, I used the same yarn as the bag. It's the Lily Sugar and Cream yarn. And the way that you make it is that you crochet the bottom, and then you work in the back loop and then work the sides. And because you're holding those 2 strands of yarn, these sides really stay up, even if there's nothing in it, which I'll go ahead and make a mess of my room just to prove a point. So, see how our bag just stands up like that? It's pretty cool. So that is another reason why you would want to crochet with multiple strands. Now let's say you're working on a smaller project that only requires 1 ball of yarn. Instead of buying 2 balls of the same color just to pull from the center, what you can do is pull one end from the center of the ball and then the other end from the side. So when you're working, you'll put them together and just pull that way. you'll just pull this way. And see, it doesn't cause any sort of tangling whenever you do it this way. Within the PDF that I put together for you, on number 7, it talks about novelty yarns. So this is an example of one of those novelty yarns because you can't really see the stitches. It's the same, like those feathery yarns, those count as novelty yarns as well. So if you are having trouble working with novelty yarns like this, there's a really cool trick that I just learned that I'm going to share with you. Now typically, if you didn't want your second strand to be noticeable, you would pair it with a color that matches as much as possible. But right now I'm going to use white so that you can see what I'm doing. So you would double up your strands and work. Let's just start with your chain. Now if you used a yarn of the same color, you wouldn't notice this here, but it helps you to recognize where those stitches are so that you'll still be able to use your novelty yarn because it helps you to see those stitches and make it a little bit easier. I think this is probably the coolest thing I've learned in a long time. So, like I said before, if this white was green, you wouldn't even notice it. And even if you did, it might bring an even better texture. So now I can see where my stitches are because of that white yarn. I don't have to worry about where's the next stitch because it's clearly shown by the normal yarn, the non-fluffy yarn, I should say. Now tell me, that's not the coolest trick ever, right? Remember when I said you can substitute a weight 4 yarn with a bulky weight if you don't have another bulky yarn? You can triple or double or however many yarn strands you want to do with that weight, and then just make the swatch and make sure that it measures the same. And I actually think this makes the yarn look fluffier and cozier too. So anyway, so this is my swatch of 3 strands of medium weight yarn, while this is using a bulky, super bulky yarn. And as you can see, it's basically the same size. Actually, it's almost perfect. So yes, they're both 4 3/4. This is super bulky number 6. Super bulky number 6, 9mm crochet hook, medium weight with 3 strands of yarn, 9mm hook. Pretty cool, huh? Now with each of these colors, I'm going to be pulling from the center pull of each of the skeins so that it's easier for me to pull them without getting tangled at all. So what you're first going to do is take your 3 or however many strands of yarn that you're using and put them all together so that they line up. Then, just as normal, you make your slip knot, stick your hook in. You can use whatever size that you need to, that you think would look best for your work. So right now I'm using a 6.5mm with 3 worsted weight yarns. So first we're going to chain. Just whenever you chain, make sure you get all 3 strands on your hook. That's the trickiest part about crocheting with multiple strands, is just making sure that you always have all 3 of those strands. Because let's say you grab 2 of them and you miss the 3rd. Well, then your work is going to start getting loose, and then you're going to notice that you're missing a color. So all you have to do is go ahead and frog your work until you get back to where your 3 strands are and keep going. I'm just kind of chaining here. I'm not even sure how much I have, but you can see we still have our 3 strands and we're creating our own colorway, which is pretty cool. And you know, another thing about crocheting with multiple strands is before you actually start a project with your 3 strands and they're all different colors, I highly suggest making a swatch of the colors first, because as beautiful as 3 colors together look, when you look at them like this, they could look completely different once you start crocheting them up. So let's say you didn't like this look, at least you would have that swatch to tell you, yeah, I don't really like those colors, instead of getting through half of a cardigan and realizing, yeah, I don't think these colors are working for me. So make sure that you make that swatch, just a small swatch, to be sure that you like the color choice. So I chained 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm going to go ahead and single crochet into each chain to the end. When you start making your stitches, make sure again that you're yarning over with all 3 colors and that you're going through all 3 of the yarn strands as you go. So right here, you can see that you have the 3 colors, so you're good. And don't be afraid to work slowly the first time around, just to make sure that you have everything. You have all the loops, you get the hang of it. It's okay to do that. And remember, just like anything else, this takes practice. So if you don't get it the first time, just keep practicing. And look, perfect time to show you a mistake. Sometimes while you're crocheting, you might drop a loop without even noticing. So same when I showed you when we were chaining. Right here, I noticed that I dropped my brown color. All you have to do is pull back, insert your hook, and try again, making sure that you grab all 3. It is as simple as that. It is tricky at first when you learn to use multiple strands of yarn, because I know there's yarn everywhere, but as we always say, just practice, 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 and you will get the hang of it, especially if you always look over those tips that I put together for you. Now I'm going to show you how to double crochet using these 3 strands, because sometimes it can be a little harder to yarn over and pull through twice. So I'm just going to show you how to do that really quick. So yarn over, making sure you have all 3 strands, yarn over, pull through 2, you still have all your 3 strands, yarn over, pull through 2. So that is our first one. And we see, wait a second, do you see the mistake here? I forgot to go through both loops. So that's the other thing. You have to make sure you go under both stitches. So the V that we talked about in our basic stitches, make sure you go under both of those. There you go. That's what it should look like. You should see all 3 of your colors. So we have brown, orange, mustard, brown, orange, mustard. And see how smoothly our yarn is pulling out? That's because we're using the center pull from each skein. One more thing to watch out for when you're crocheting with multiple strands is, especially when you're using the double crochet stitch, it can be a little bit harder to rip back, just in case you need to, and of course we all need to sometimes. So whenever you're pulling your yarn back, make sure that you're holding all 3 strands of yarn with the same tension. That way, you know, I don't know where these purple, whatever. Anyway, make sure you're holding all 3 strands of yarn so that they all pull at the same time. If you use one strand, if you use one strand, then the rest of them are going to get stuck. So just make sure you pull them to make them even. So sometimes it can be a pain in the butt, but that's how you fix it, just in case you have that problem. Now, another thing you can do to make things even easier is, although we're pulling from the center of the skein, so that already makes it pretty easy, you can also wind up your ball in a ball winder and simply put it in your yarn bowl and pull. And you see, this is why I love yarn bowls. It makes things so much easier so that your yarn's not flopping around on the floor or anything like that. And I have like 500 of these things. But let's say you put 2 of your skeins into both of your yarn bowls. You can take both of your ends, put them through the holes, and pull just like that. Isn't that just satisfying to watch? But yeah, that is how you crochet using multiple strands of yarn. I hope this tutorial helped you, and I hope those tips help you as well. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to ask. I'll see you for the next one. Bye.